writer and a design lecturer. And I've been invited by Cohen Fashion Design School to give a series of talks on color experience. In this online course, we'll talk about the psychology of color, we'll talk about how cultures perceive color, we'll talk about the science of color and how the eye perceives color. We'll look at different color harmonies, color wheel, relationships like complementary colors and analogous colors, and how to use those in space. We'll look at color trends of the 20th century and the development of new trends in the next 10 years of interiors. What's very interesting is to see how these trends relate to what was happening 100 years ago. And finally, we'll talk about how to develop a concept for a client in order to help you create unique interiors the way that a professional interior designer does. And I will show you how to create professional sample boards, show you how to show samples to clients so that they can understand what you're proposing for their interiors. I hope you enjoy this problem. Hello, I'm Adrienne Chin. I'm an interior designer and design speaker and lecturer, and I've been invited today to speak to you for a Cohen School of Design on the subject of the science of color. So, first we'll see, how do we see color? Now, color originates from light. Sunlight, as we perceive it, is colorless. So when you look around space, you see nothing. It's clear. But everything that you see around you is actually made up of all the colors that you see in a rainbow. Now, the light that emanates from the sun or from a source of light, like electronic light, comes in on wavelengths. And every color has a different wavelength. The cooler colors, purple, blue, green, have shorter wavelengths. And as we get down to the warmer colors, yellow, orange, red, these are longer wavelengths. So we have all of these wavelengths coming at us from the source of light. The color of the visible light depends on the wavelength. So if it is a shorter wavelength, you will see one of the cooler colors, will be green or blue or purple. And if it's the longer wavelength, you will see the red, orange, and yellow. And what happens is these wavelengths will be traveling from the sun or from your source of light, and they will hit the object that you're looking at. And what will happen is that object, the molecules of that object, will absorb most of these wavelengths. But wavelengths that it's unable to absorb because of molecular composition, they will refract, they will send out back to the world. And that is actually the color that we see. So what's happening in this example is that we have a red shirt and we have some blue shorts. And the red shirt is absorbing all of the wavelengths that are every color except red. So it's eating up the blue and the violet and the yellow, the orange, and the green. But the one color that the molecular dye of this structure of the dye of the shirt cannot absorb is the red. So this is the reason that we can see the red. And it's the same for the blue. Here, the shorts can only absorb all the colors except for blue. So it's refracting out the blue. So that is what we can see. So an apple, for instance, is every color except red. So a lemon is every color except that object cannot absorb. So that is why we can see that color. In order to see color, we need three things. We need a source of light, and that can be the sun or the electric light. We need an object that light will hit upon, and we need a viewer who has normal color vision. Now, we'll look a little bit about the science of how our eyes see color. This is obviously quite important. Our eye is made up of rods and cones. And we're going to go a little bit into this and understand how we actually see color. Now, the cones, which are shaped like cones, here, they're all shaped like cones. They are the cell in the eye at the back of the retina, which can perceive color. The rods, the ones that are straight, can only perceive black, white, and gray. Now, the average person can see between 6 and 7 billion colors because of the way the cones react to the vibrations that are coming from the light source. And these are divided into red, green, and blue cones. And how these cones interact with each other will help you see all the colors: yellow, green, purple, etc. And so, for instance, here, when the light from the apple hits the cones, it stimulates the cones in your eye to various degrees. And the signal that is taken up by the optic nerve as the light comes in, hits the cones and hits the optic nerve. This will go to your brain, the visual cortex in your brain, and your brain will then give you the information to interpret that as red. So the light comes to the cone and it hits the cone sends the message to the visual cortex of the brain, and that will tell you what color you're seeing. That's how that works. So now we'll look at the rods. The rods, which are shaped like a rod, they're straight, they activate when there's no light source. So as the light fades during the end of the day, the cones go to sleep, and then the rods wake up. So what happens is, in the evening, when there's no light, that's when the rods are at work. So what happens, you might be sleeping, and if you have to get up in the middle of the night, and you put the light on, suddenly, you might see a flash, and it's difficult to sleep for a second. And what's happening is you've suddenly woken up all those cones. It's like they've had the alarm clock, and they've woken up in the middle of a night of sleep. And your cones and your rods are confused about which one should be working. So what happens? The rods suddenly have to go to sleep, and the cones have to wake up. Then when you turn your light off, you might have a moment where you just see black. And that's because the rods are going, oh, I have to wake up now. So this is why sometimes when you're quickly turning off and on the light, you have a second where you can't see very well. So now let's look at how the background of a color can affect how you perceive it. In this situation, you see that we have a dark green wall here, and we have a bright yellow wall here. Maybe in a room you had a dark green wall and the rest you painted yellow, which is fun. And then you decide to put the upholstery in this mid-color. Now, if you look on this picture here, it looks like these two are different colors. This looks darker and this looks lighter. However, if you move over here and you shift them together, you see it's actually the same color. So, depending on what the background is, this will affect how you perceive the color as well. And you might want to consider that in a room. If this is your upholstery color, and you don't want somebody to perceive it's different in front of your green wall and your yellow wall. Okay? Now, the assimilation of lightness and colors is surprising. In the picture to the right, the colored stripes appear darker behind the black pattern and brighter behind the white pattern. Now, the green is the same, and the purple is the same, and the blue is the same, and the red is the same. But depending what you have in front of it can make you perceive the color differently. So assimilation is even more impressive in colors, as the bottom picture shows here. Only red, green, yellow, and blue have been used. Green, yellow, and blue. But how many colors do you see here? You see some purple, you see a bit of orange, you see other colors because of the way these colors have been put together. Now again, how does that affect an interior designer? Well, you might not want anybody to see purple in your room, but if you put red upholstery in front of a blue wall, it will combine together and give the perception of purple. So you have to be aware of color relationships. When choosing the textures and finishes in the color scheme, you must always be aware that the colors will reflect on each other, like we saw in the previous example. And it will change how you will perceive that item. And we'll see some examples, some interiors examples of that shortly. So here, for instance, this red is the same red. But here, it looks much brighter on the green than it does on the gray. And the reason for that is that the green is opposite red on the color spectrum, and it will always make the opposite color look the brightest. So let's look at some of these examples I mentioned. So what happens if you place a white sofa in a blue room? What happens is you will start seeing blue reflected on the sofa. So that white sofa won't look as bright as you might think because the blue is reflecting on it. This is because the white won't absorb the blue wavelengths that are being directed at it from the blue walls. It's reflecting them. So the white sofa is reflecting this blue back at you, and so that's why you're seeing some of that blue. And here, you can see this quite well here. You have a yellow sofa in front of the green wall, and look at the green shadows. That green is so strong, it's reflecting on that sofa. So it's making the sofa look green-yellow instead of yellow. So when you have a strong color behind a colored piece of furniture, that color will reflect in the shadows of that piece of furniture. Here, again, you have a strong blue here, and you can see in the shadows there's some blue being reflected. Yes? So, again, it's not that it's wrong, it's just that you need to be aware that this is something that may happen and may give you a slightly different look in the room than you're intending. And once again, this example, we have this very pink sofa, and we have this very strong blue, and you can see, here the blue is reflecting in the sofa and making these areas look purple in the shadows. And in a way, it looks quite attractive, which is fine. But it's just when you have a very deep color wall and a different color piece of furniture, there will be a reflection of a color in that piece of furniture. And here you can definitely see the pink coming onto the sofa. So now let's look at what we call additive color. The primary colors of light, which we talked about with the cones, are red, green, and blue. And mixing these colors will make all of the colors of light that we can see. So this is how television, computer screens, or any kind of function where the colors coming from light sources, that these are your main colors, and together they will create white. Just like light from the sun, when you put all of these colors together, it creates the white light that we see. This is called additive color. Now, in interior design, what we are mostly concerned with is called subtractive color. This is color that's created when you're mixing dyes and paints and inks, that kind of thing. It's not color coming from light, it's color coming from a product. Okay? So when we have this kind of subtractive color, we start with magenta, yellow, and cyan, or we also call it red, yellow, and blue. And when you mix them all together, you get black. Okay? So this is the kind of color that we're talking about in interior design, because we're always working with dyes and paints and inks, things like that. So let's just recap what we've looked at the moment. Our ability to see color accurately depends on light. We must have light. It's the most significant element in color perception. And it is actually the color of reflected light that you see from an object. And the object is absorbing all the other color vibrations. You're seeing what is reflected back at you. Background effects. So we were just looking at the walls where the colors of the wall were reflecting on the piece of furniture in front. So this is an effect that you need to be aware of as an interior designer. The eye's ability to correctly perceive a color is affected by what is behind it. You might not see the color as clearly as you intend if it's affected by what's behind it. Retinal fatigue. Remember, when we're looking at that red wall and our cone is getting very tired, the red cone is getting very tired. So what happens when you turn away and look at a white wall? That red suddenly goes to sleep for a bit and you see its opposite color, green. This is called retinal fatigue. Now, poor color memory. Our brains find it very difficult to remember the specifics of any color. So, to effectively determine slight color differences, you must see your samples touching each other. So, when you are choosing fabric and paint colors and carpets for an interior, you might think, yes, that's the perfect green for this room. But remember, you need to see it with what's behind it, next to it, because that will change how that color will look in that space. If you just look at it as the green, here you go, that's perfect, but it might not be perfect when you put it in front of the pink wall that you're intending. And color defects. As I said, you need a client, a person who can see color properly in order to give them the best effect of your design. And here, this lovely bedroom, very nice, red and green. However, if your client can't see red and green, this would be a bad design choice for them, because they would only see this as brown or maybe yellow. They won't see the red and green. So you need to know this information from your client. And then, if you remember, we spoke about color defects. So this concludes this particular talk about the science of color. What we wanted to do here is to give you some information of how a human being perceives color and to start showing you how that can be used in an interior design and the things that you need to be aware of when you're choosing colors in an interior design because of the way that color relationships work.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Chin, and now I'm going to speak to you about color theory and how that influences how you might use color in interior spaces. So, the development of color theory, where did that start? Well, obviously humans have always been able to see color, but it's only when Isaac Newton in the 17th century noticed light refracting through a prism, a chandelier prism, that he saw the colors and thought, why is that happening? He was a scientist, a physicist, so he applied his scientific brain to try to understand why he was suddenly seeing these colors coming through the crystal from a chandelier, through the light. So he analyzed what he was seeing, and he came up with what was the first circle of color. So he developed this circle of color, and in this circle of color were all the colors of the rainbow: purple, blue, red, orange, yellow, green, going around. But instead of in a rainbow, he put them in a circle so that they were in a continuous circle going around. This was our first color circle, and this is still what we do as designers. We use a color circle in our design. And this was the first time that we saw the idea of colors put into this circle. Now, this color circle is still something that interior designers, and not only interior designers, but designers of any type, fashion designers or theater designers, they all will use color theory, and we all go back to this color circle, which originated with the scientist Sir Isaac Newton. There have been other scientists and artists subsequently that have taken the first color theory and have built upon it and added more theory and ideas to it. And one of the most famous people in the realm of interior design or design is Johannes Itten, who he was born in 1888, died in 1967, and he worked primarily in the 30s and 40s, and he came up with a more complex look at the color circle. So what he did, he took the outside color circle here that Sir Isaac Newton developed, and then he came up with different relationships that we will discuss. And these relationships, in relation to this color circle, I'm going to talk about today in the whole theory of color harmonies. So here we go. Here is our pie, our circle with all our rainbow colors, as we see. And we start with the warmer colors. And the warmer colors all have some yellow in them. So they have yellow, green, yellow, yellow, orange, red, orange, and red. So these are all our warm colors. And then we get to our cool colors, which are the colors that have violet or blue or green in them. So we go red, violet, violet, blue, violet, blue, blue, green, and green. They are warm and cool colors. So we start our color wheel with three colors: yellow, red, and blue. These are our primary colors that we start with. And they are equally distant from each other on the color wheel. They form a triangle. And we are now talking about subtractive colors, which mean colors that need to be blended together to create other colors. So these are colors that are in paints and dyes and inks. So in order to create orange, which is the color between yellow and red, we mix in equal proportions yellow and red to make orange. And then Equally, if we mix red and blue, we create violet, and then blue and yellow creates green. And these are called our secondary colors. So we have our primary colors, red, blue, and our secondary colors, orange, green, and violet. All right? And then finally, on our color wheel, we have what we call the tertiary colors. Tertiary, all that means is it's the third layer of color. And these are the colors that are developed when you mix a primary color with a secondary color. So when you mix red and violet, you get red-violet, etc. Violet and blue, you get blue-violet. So it's that color in between. Now, these are not obviously the only colors we have. These are the most saturated versions of these colors, but obviously these can change if you add white or gray or black to them, and we will look at that in a second. So let's look again, just refresh ourselves. We have our primary colors. You cannot create these colors by mixing any other two colors. In the subtractive color method, you must always start with these colors. And then when you mix these in equal proportions, you then get our purple, violet, our green, and our orange. And then when you mix those, we get our colors in between. You can see. Okay, that is our full circle of colors. Now, obviously, on the color wheel, we don't have any black, white, or gray. And these are colors that are entirely permissible to use in an interior space and are becoming more and more popular in effect. Especially contemporary design and more edgy design, we tend to like to use these colors. So this is called an achromatic color scheme. Achromatic means without color. So none of these have any of the color of the rainbow. They are without color. So the thing with gray is that true gray is a mix of the white and black in different quantities. But in interiors, many of the grays that are out there in carpets and paint and fabric, they are not true gray. In the dye of these items, you would see that there is some blue added or some yellow added or pink. And this will make the gray slightly different. So you have to be very careful when you're using grays in an interior that you're not putting a yellowy gray next to a pinky gray because they will not look nice. So you need to be very careful about that. Now the other color story that is not on the color wheel are the neutral colors. These are the earthy colors, the colors of sand and cream, beige, taupe, all of these lovely neutral colors. Now these I call they're like the shoes of the room. You can use any of these colors at any time, even when you're using the colors from color circle. These are our basic colors that are entirely permissible to use at any time. And also you can create beautiful schemes just using these colors. But there is a trick to using these colors well in an interior, which we will talk about in another lecture about texture and pattern. So now let's go back to our color wheel. The colors on the color wheel are hues. Now let's look at hues. A hue is the term used to describe the most fully saturated version of a color. And these are the colors that are on the color wheel. They are the brightest, most vibrant versions of these colors. So you can see this is the brightest red, the brightest blue, the brightest orange, the brightest yellow. So these are called hues. Now, when you change a hue to make it paler or darker, you are changing the value of that hue. Okay? So when you add white to it, the value becomes paler. And when you add black to it, the value becomes darker. So that's just some terminology. But how does that relate to an interior? Well, here we add white to this red, and it becomes paler and paler, become pastel colors, until it gets to very, very pale, pale pink. And if you add gray to a color, here, it becomes grayer and grayer. This is a tone. And if you add black, it becomes a shade. So why is it important to know about tints, tones, and shades? Well, if you are an interior designer, you need to know the correct terminology for when you're working with other professionals. So if you're working with a professional painter, painting your room, and you say, that red that we have, that paint, it's too red. I want to make it paler. I want to make it a paler shade of red. And your decorator, your painter is going, a paler shade. Do you want it dark or do you want it light? So what you should say is, I want to make a tint of red. Yes, because then they will understand that you just want white. So it's very easy to confuse the terminology, but if you're a professional, you really need to use the correct terminology. So here are some examples of rooms. Here we have the tint of red. Tint of red is pink. And we have a tint of the purple, which is very pale, pale lilac. And when you have a room in tints, it gives much softer, quite often quite feminine feel to a space. Very easy to live with. Now when you add gray to a color, so this is blue that has gray added. So you can see that it's gray, but it has very much a blue look to it, and the walls are blue with a little bit of gray added, and the carpet is blue with gray. So it's not an achromatic room. Achromatic would be gray, but you can see that this gray has a lot of blue in it. So it's actually tones of blue. And then obviously shades. You add black to a color, it gets darker and darker and becomes a very moody space. And this has become quite popular in European countries in the last 5 years or so, to have very dark rooms. So this is something to consider as an option. One thing that's very interesting about dark rooms is you can paint a room a dark color and it actually will make the room feel larger. And the reason for that is that if you paint the ceiling and the walls and you have a dark floor, you no longer see the corners of the space. It's like going into a cave and the corners disappear. So it feels like the space is going on forever. But what is also happening because it's dark, it's enclosing you. So it's a strange phenomena. If you paint all the surfaces dark, it both encloses you and opens the space at the same time. Now, saturation, which many of us understand from our phones now, we can make color when we're correcting our photos to make them more saturated color. That's exactly what it is. Saturation is when you make the color as bright as possible. It's fully saturated then. Fully saturated color. Now, all the colors in this room have the same intensity, the same level of saturation. Okay? They are all quite vibrant colors here. And vibrant colors translate extremely well on an achromatic base. Achromatic being white, gray, or black. So this is another reason achromatic color schemes have become very popular in the last few years, because they form a very good backdrop for these vibrant hues. Now, all of these pastel colors have the same saturation level, the same intensity. They are all pastels in this room. If you were to put in a bright orange in this room, it wouldn't sit very well. It would be clashing with the feel of this room. And obviously here we have a very vibrant restaurant space, and all the colors in this restaurant are at the fully saturated hues of these colors. So you can see how they're actually working together because of the saturation level. If you had some that were bright and some that were tones and some that were pastels, your eye wouldn't be able to comprehend that mix of information. So it's quite often an idea as an interior designer to consider what level of saturation, of intensity your colors are, because you can create a quite coherent room by just keeping the saturation level the same in the space. Now, I mentioned shortly a while ago about warm colors and cool colors. So warm sit around the yellow and orange colors here on the wheel, and blue, the cool colors sit around blue, green, and purple. And why is that important to know? Well, in the northern hemisphere, the opposite in the southern hemisphere, you need to know which direction the light is coming into your room in order to choose your colors appropriately. And if you have a north-facing room, the light that's coming in is a grayer light than if you have a south-facing room where you have a warmer light coming in. So if you have a north-facing room and you want to make it feel more warm and welcoming, you would choose warmer colors. Your light is very blue-gray. You choose the warmer colors and it would make your north-facing room feel warmer. If you were to choose the cool colors for a north-facing room, it would feel much colder and grayer. And the vice versa, if you have a south-facing room and you want to make it feel cooler, you would choose cool colors. Now, obviously, we're not changing the temperature of the room actually, but it's a strange thing about color perception, because our bodies will perceive the room cooler or will perceive the room warmer from what we're seeing. So here's an example. This would be a north-facing room. So you have the cooler light, but look what happens when you put in yellow colors and warm colors. It really lifts the space into a warm room. And then the cool colors, which cluster around the blues and purples and greens, as I said, you might use these in the southern-facing room. And here's an example. So this is a property in the south of France. You get a lot of the light coming in, warm light. You feel very warm in this room. So by using these cool colors on a neutral base, it's making the room feel cooler. Right, but it's not that simple. The thing is, am I saying that if you've got a cool room where the light is coming in from the north that you can never use blue or green or purple? No, I'm not saying that. And am I saying if you have a south-facing room that you can never use yellow or orange or red? I'm not saying that either. Every color has a cool and a warm version of that color going around the color wheel. So for instance, let's look at green. You have green, but if green has a bit of yellow in it, it becomes a yellow-green. And if green has a bit of blue in it, it becomes a blue-green. So maybe you've got somebody who likes blue, and they have a north-facing room, and they say, I really, really want to have blue in this room. And you think, well, if I have blue, it's going to feel very cold. But if you use some blue that you add some yellow to it, a green color, or if you have blue and you add some red to it, it becomes a warm blue. So you can change the perception of the color by adding a bit of warmth or coolness, some blue or yellow to a color to make it warmer or cooler. So if somebody had a north-facing room and they wanted blue, I would probably add some yellow to the blue and make it a bit more of a blue-green color. And that would give some of the warmth to it. If I used this cool blue, it would feel very gray and very cold. Now, color relationships, we spoke about in the last lecture a little bit, but again, I will talk about this a bit more. You have to be very aware of what's going on behind you, and that could be the wall, paint, or wallpaper, or it could be curtains behind you. You have to be aware of what color that is. So this red, the same red, but you can perceive it very differently here, depending on what the color is behind it. So in this case, you can see it at its most strong, its strongest strength here. And that reason is because green is opposite red on the color wheel, and it's making the red be as intense as possible. Now here it's on some magenta pink color, and it's really making this look quite orange, and it's also taking away its intensity. Here against the blue, it's also making it look quite orange. And here against the orange, it's fading that red out. So if you have a wall painted in one of these colors, maybe not even that bright, but it would affect your sofa that's red. That's how you perceive that red sofa. And the same here with the yellow. And you will see the different intensities of this yellow. Now this would look horrible. Yellow on this pink wall would just look terrible. So it's good to be aware of what's happening, so that when you choose your upholstery or anything that's happening in the middle of the room, it's not clashing with what's going behind. And how do you do that? I'm saying that, and you go, yeah, that's all very well and good, but how do I do that? Well, this is where color harmonies, which I'm going to talk to you about now, is going to come into effect. And this is one of the most important bits of information that an interior designer needs to learn in order to be effective as an interior designer. So, the first one, and I've mentioned this a few times, complementary colors. So we've got our color wheel. So we have red, and directly opposite red on the color wheel is green. Okay, directly opposite blue on the color wheel is orange. Directly opposite yellow on the color wheel is violet or purple. Okay, so you'll see all the colors that are directly opposite each other. These are all complementary colors. They are the most opposite colors from each other. Now, another harmony is called triadic, and triadic means triangle. So there are three colors that are equally distant from each other on the color wheel. Any three colors that are equally distant is called a triadic color scheme. Analogous are 3 to 5 or 6 colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. Okay? And these, in all of these cases, they can be the full hue, or they can be tints, tones, and shades of these colors. And then monochromatic is colors that if you were to cut pie from the palest version of the color out to its most saturated, that would be a monochromatic color scheme. So it's all these blue down to the tints of blue. And it can go to the shades of blue. It has to be just from that wedge of pie. And some other ones that I'll mention, and I will show you examples of rooms with these schemes in a minute. Split complementary, where you have complementary color, but instead of using the opposite, you use the colors either side of the opposite color. So it's complementary, but it's split. Okay? Dyadic is two colors. Di means two. So it's two colors that are skipped. You skip one color, and then it's the two colors. So here, red and purple. Or it could be yellow, green, and blue-green. So two colors that skip. And tetradic means many colors. It doesn't have to be four opposite, but many colors in a row. So let's go back to complementary colors, which is one of the most common color schemes used by interior designers. And I will also tell you the formula that I've developed through my years of being an interior designer, which I feel is the most effective way to use complementary colors in a scheme. So complementary colors, as I said, they are colors that are directly opposite each other. Any two colors directly opposite each other. And the strange thing about nature is quite often nature puts complementary colors together naturally. And we don't know why that is, but when you're out in nature, it's good to keep your eyes open because you will quite often see these combinations. Here's the green and the red. In the springtime, the purple and the yellow come out at the same time. Here's a blue sky with the orange. And these are all complementary color schemes. So nature does it better than any of us designers, so we must always keep our eyes open. So let's look at complementary colors as an example of green and red. Okay? So we've got our green and red. Here we've got the most full intensity hues of these. Now how do you put them together properly in a room? If you were to use them 50% in the room, they would clash. Their intensity of both of them are fighting each other. They both want to be the strongest color in the room. So if you put them both equally in the room, your eye doesn't know which color to look at. It confuses the brain. However, if you use about 80% of one color and 20% of the other, or 90% and 10%, or 70%, 30%, always have one that's a higher percentage in the room than the other. And then that's the correct way to use complementary colors in a room. So let's look at some examples here. So blue and orange opposite each other in the color wheel. And here, and as I said before, you can use tints, tones, and shades. They don't have to be the fully saturated hue. So in this bedroom here, we have pale blue, has white in it, and we have fully intense saturated orange. What you see here is that the orange, there's more orange and there's a little bit of the blue. So they're not fighting each other. Okay. And here it's the opposite. Well, here we have the orange wall and the blue as an accent as well. So one is dominating the other. Also, when you have a fully saturated hue, it's always attracting your attention more than a pale color as well. So another way to emphasize even more this combination of 80%, 20% is to have one that's fully saturated and one that's pale. So now let's look at a triadic color scheme. So there, any three colors which form a triangle on our color wheel is a triadic scheme. So in this case, we see yellow, blue, and red. Again, it can be tints, tones, and shades of these colors. Here we see purple, orange, and green. That's another triadic scheme. So here, this is an office that I designed for a client's house. And I used a triadic, fully saturated. These are the brightest versions of the blue, yellow, and red. Fully saturated yellow, blue, and red scheme in the room here. Notice that, as I said before, achromatic backgrounds, white, black, or gray, work best with fully saturated colors. So here I have a white background for these fully saturated colors. And this is another room. I didn't design this room. It's a bit bright, but it's good for a child's bedroom. And here we have the purple, green, and orange triadic color scheme here. Now, analogous color schemes are one of the most popular and easy to live with color schemes in interior design. And these are 3 to 6 colors, which are right next to each other on the color wheel. And again, you can use tints, tones, and shades. So here's an example of warm colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel. We have orange, we have the yellow orange, and the magenta, pink color next to each other on the color wheel. You see them over here. And why they work is because they are neighbors. There is something that links them to each other. So they will always be in harmony. They're harmonious colors. So they're quite easy to live with. And monochromatic colors. Now, this is a place where designers will often get a little bit confused. As I mentioned, monochromatic colors are like you've taken a slice from one of the hues. Here we have blue, and we've got all these colors with a bit of white going down to the palest of the blue, and if you were to add black, it would continue this way to shades. So they have to be just from that slice of color. Some people get confused and think that a monochromatic scheme would be this blue, this blue, this blue, this way. But that's an analogous scheme. That's next to each other. So monochromatic is just slicing down that blue, pale versions, tones, or shades. Tints, tones, and shades of the color. And here's a very beautiful blue scheme here. Tints, tones, and shades. And you don't often have other colors in a monochromatic scheme because that confuses the palette. You will have blacks, whites, and neutrals for sure, but usually the only color that you really see are the tints, tones, and shades of that hue that you've chosen. Schemes that I'm going to talk to you about now are ones that you don't see quite as often, but it's good to know about them as a designer. Here we've got, as I mentioned, we have a color. Here we've got purple or violet. The opposite, the complementary, is yellow, but instead of using yellow, we use yellow-orange and use yellow-green. So it's the two colors opposite the complementary color. So here we've got our violet, and we've got our green, and we've got orange. So we've got the split complementary scheme here. It's a very popular scheme from India. So you often see this kind of pink, purple, orange scheme coming from India. Dyadic colors, two colors, which skip a color in between. So here we see an example of a dyadic scheme. We have our red and our violet, and it can create quite a dynamic scheme. Once again, it's good to have one of the colors which is dominant over the other. So here our violet is 80% of the color in the room, and the red is 20%. If it was half and half, it's like the complement. You don't know which color to look at. And then tetradic colors. when you're using many colors. And you have to be very careful when you do this because you can create quite messy interior if you're not very careful. But a very good way to do a tetradic color scheme are to use the colors of the rainbow. So here, basically the colors come from the way they arrange the books. And you see all the colors from your rainbow, your color wheel here. And this would be what we would call a tetradic color scheme. Now, achromatic colors, as I've mentioned, have become more and more popular. And these are white through the grays to black. And they can be quite sophisticated as for modern interiors and warehouse conversions. They have quite an edgy feel. They can be a little bit cold feeling, and so what's quite good with these is to add an accent color of fully saturated hue, and that will lift a monochromatic scheme. So here's a monochromatic scheme. They have a little bit of blue they put in, but you see a lot of gray and black, a little bit of white. And then neutral colors. Neutral colors were never really used in interiors until really the 1980s, 1990s, and they suddenly had an upsurge of popularity. And there were more and more paints being developed and dyes being developed in these neutral colors. Neutral colors are extremely easy to live with because they feel like nature, colors of nature. But you have to be very careful because they can also be very boring to live with if you don't mix up the texture. That's the key to how to use neutrals. So if we look at this example of a neutral room, what makes it a successful neutral space is that although we don't have any colored hues in this space, we have a lot of texture. And that's what you need to do in order to make a neutral room an appealing space to be in. Here we can see that we have a lot of this woolly texture with the cushions and the carpet. We have wood, rough wood, we have smooth wood, we have this plaster. So by adding all of this texture, you can keep into a neutral scheme and it still is a very attractive room to be in. Now, I just want to go over a couple of other items you might need to be aware of for color and how to use color in interiors. Now, there are some notational color systems you should be aware of as an interior designer. And what are those? Well, there is a system called RAL, or R-A-L, which is a color fan, and there's another system called NCS. It's a similar kind of thing. It's a different company. And what they do is they have many, many, many colors in each situation. And these are colors that are not just used for interior design, but they're used by printers. They're used by the fabric manufacturers for their dye. Where would you use one of these notational systems? Well, they're primarily used in commercial design work, interior work, where you might have a client who says to you, I have a logo, and I have this orange and this purple in my logo. And now they would be able to get their printer to tell you what the code is for that orange and the code is for that exact purple color. And you would be able to match exactly that orange or that purple from one of these notational systems. So why would you want to do that? Well, maybe this client says, well, I wanted the new reception desk in my lobby to be exactly that orange of my logo, exactly that one. So you can't go to a paint store and just buy orange paint. It won't be the same. You must go with the code from the printer, from the logo, and use the orange from one of these systems. And then the company who's manufacturing that reception desk can then have it spray dyed into a paint that is exactly the same orange color. So the same client might say, in the lobby, with my new reception desk, I want the carpet to be the purple and the orange of my logo. So you would go to your notational system, and you would go to your carpet manufacturer, and you would say, I want this carpet to be that orange and that purple dye, and they would mix the same dye batch. So that is why these are useful systems if you're using colors that are outside of normal paint company ranges or dye ranges. Now, there are a few websites around now where they have color extraction methods, which could be quite a useful thing for you for deciding color schemes for rooms. You might have an image that you found online that you like the colors of, and you think, well, maybe these colors would look great in this teenage boy's room that I'm designing. So what colors are they, and what are the proportions of colors in this photograph? So there's a company called tineyelabs.com, and there are other companies as well, where you can download the image, the photograph or picture from online, and what it will do, it creates a color map, and then it prints out all the colors in that image, and it prints out the quantity of color in that image. So you can then, it will tell you the code of that color, and then you can go to your paint company and say, I want this blue, which is here, with the code, and they can develop that blue color for your walls or something like that. So this is sometimes you might see a picture that's inspiring you, and this will give you the color scheme from that picture in the correct quantities as well. And I have a few other examples. So there's another company called colorexplorer.com. We looked at TinEye, and there's pictaculus.com, and there are many. I'm sure you can go online and you'll find other companies like this. But in all of them, you download your picture, and it will give you a reference of the colors in that picture. And here's another example of an image, and another company that has printed it out in a different way, the colors. And here, a pudding. And again, it gives you the colors from this image. So sometimes you might have inspiration from an image for your color scheme, and this will be something we will discuss in another lecture, how to design a room around a concept image. Hello, it's Adrienne Shin, and today I'm going to talk to you about the psychology of color. Now, with color, because it's vibrations and because the human body is made up primarily of water, we respond to different color vibrations in different ways. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how color will affect our psychology and our emotions. So here we have the same room, but it's painted in 4 different colors. And each of these different rooms will make you feel a different way. So in the pink room, you will feel quite joyful, and it's a very feminine feeling. And in the white room, it feels very clean and fresh. That might be choices that you make if you're making a Scandinavian design. It bounces light around the space. Kind of a northern feel. Here with the gray, down here, it's a more subtle tone. It's very popular in parts of Europe, tones of gray, because the light in Europe is very gray. So what happens is when you have colors that have a gray tone to them, they actually look quite appropriate in European and northern hemispheres. If you use gray colors when you are going to the southern hemisphere and in the equator, these colors will look very, very dull because the sun is much brighter in these areas. And then here we have a picture where we see blue and purple, and then this is a very cool feeling room, and this might be the kind of choice that you make if you have a south-facing window and you want to make the room feel much cooler. Now, color is part of the conscious, and that, what I mean by that is that it's what you think and what you feel. And the subconscious, which is the mental processes occurring without much conscious perception. And as well, the unconscious, the memories, the impulses, and the feelings that are underlying our day-to-day existence. So color affects all of these three areas of the human psyche: the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. So human reaction to color is always a psychological one. We will respond to color through memories that it triggers, positive or negative, through how the vibrations, as I said before, will react to the water in our bodies, creating different feelings. So it's very important for an interior designer to understand these elements of color. The other thing I'm going to talk about today is how color also is very different culturally. And I will talk about some of the different cultures and how they use and respond to color in different ways. And again, this is something an interior designer needs to be aware of when they're working with different clients. So I'm going to review the color wheel again, because once again, this is something that is extremely important for interior designers. It's good. You can buy small color wheels that you can put in a bag and have to refer to, which is a very useful thing to have. So notice that the arrows here are going to the warm colors and these are going to the cool colors. So this is something we spoke about the other day, and this is also very important for the psychology of color. Now we associate the colors of fire, so reds, yellows, and orange, with warmth. And research indicates that when our bodies are under red lighting, our bodies secrete more adrenaline, which increases our blood pressure and our rate of breathing. It's related to the flight response. The adrenaline rises, and traditionally the color red or yellow or orange in nature was perceived to be dangerous because of fire, and it would our bodies would respond with the urge to flee, to run away from it. So even though we no longer have that particular need to run away from these colors, our body still has this effect of the adrenaline rising when we are around these kind of colors. By contrast, we associate the colors of the sea, blue and green, with coolness. And again, research shows that green and blue lights, they will slow our heartbeat down, make us more relaxed, and decrease our body temperature. So again, these are excellent colors to choose for a bedroom, where you want somebody to be feeling very calm and tranquil. Better than choosing red for a bedroom, where it would be very stimulating, especially for children's rooms. You don't want to put red and orange and yellow in children's rooms because it would be hard for them to sleep. Now, let's explore the physical effects of color. And I like this picture. This is from the Holi festival in India, which is a festival of color every year, where they throw powdered dyes on everybody. And that's just a symbol of how joyful color can be and how we respond to joy with these type of very vibrant colors. Let's look at red. So I've mentioned red. So traditionally red has some meanings, meaning of warning, which I mentioned. Love is associated with red, courage, aggression, and anger. So red is the longest wavelength of light coming down from the sun. And in Western cultures, red is associated with power and control and strength. But it also signals danger and triggers alertness. And then red on traffic lights signal drivers to be alert and to stop. Some animals have red coloration to indicate they are dangerous and deadly. And some animals, birds for instance, will have red coloration to make their predators think that they are either dangerous or something that they shouldn't pursue. So in nature, red will be incorporated into animals' coloring as a protective measure quite often. Red also signifies passion, and it invokes this flight or fight response. So when you use red in an interior, this can suggest luxury and richness. It's appropriate for dining rooms because red stimulates the appetite. So in traditional English country house dining rooms of the Georgian period and the Victorian period, very often the dining rooms were painted red because it made people feel like they wanted to eat and socialize. An accent of red adds a great deal of energy to a room, and red will look best if the type of lighting in the space is the warm incandescent lighting rather than cool LED lighting. The other thing, here we see in this room quite a lot of red. And the thing is, if there's a lot of red like this, it can be very difficult to relax in the space and want to stay in the space a long period of time. So quite often when I use red, I only use a small amount. Red is such an intense color that usually just a small amount is enough to be effective in a room. Now in contrast, we have blue. Blue is internationally considered the most favorite color of people. And I think this is because we're used to seeing the blue in the sky, and it's very reassuring, calming color. So it represents trust and efficiency, coolness, security, and sadness as well. So we have the expression to feel the blues, which means to feel a little bit sad. So there's also that about blue. You have to be careful about the color of blue that you choose in a room, because if the blue has too much gray in it, it will bring down the body and make the body feel a little bit flat. So blue is associated with calmness and tranquility. It's also the symbol of logic, communication, and intelligence. It's linked with low stress, low temperature, and low pulse rate. So it's very mentally calming. You'll often see it in hospitals and places where you need to keep people very calm. It's also associated with a lack of warmth or emotional distance, so you do have to be aware of that. It can create a real coolness in a space, not just temperature-wise, but keeping people apart from each other. It's not a very good color, for instance, for a dining room, because it will not make people feel very social. And also, blue is an appetite-suppressant color. When you have a blue space, you feel less inclined to eat, and when you have a red space, you feel more inclined to eat. So in interiors, blue is very comfortable and easy to live with. Can be used almost everywhere, but as I say, probably not in the dining room. However, if you do use blue in a dining room or a kitchen, it's quite a good idea to use the complement color with it, orange, or yellow as well works, to help warm the blue up. And these warm colors will stimulate the appetite. So it's a cool color, and it can help cool a very sunny room. And very cobalt blues and crisp white have a very classic look. Here we have a monochromatic color scheme, all the different tints and shades of this blue, and combined with the crisp white, it gives a very fresh feeling. Now yellow is a symbol of energy, hope, honor, fear as well, and frailness. What that means is it is a little bit the color of sickness. You have to be careful how you use yellow. It's also one of the colors that most people either like or dislike. It gives a very strong impulse to people when you say which colors do you like or dislike. And quite often people say, I love yellow or I hate yellow. It's the most visible color to the eye, and it's the color of optimism and creativity. It attracts our attention, but it can also signify caution. And here yellow in a room, so yellow wavelength is long and it stimulates the emotions. The bright yellow will lift our spirits and our self-esteem, and it's the color of confidence and optimism. However, too much of it, or too much of the wrong tone of it, in relation to other colors in the interior, will cause you to feel anxious and restless. So again, here it's very stimulating. It might be very nice in a reception room where people have to sit and wait and you want them to feel alert. Great for a room where children are playing and they want to be very active and dynamic. But if you have a very bright color, yellow like this, again in a bedroom, it will be very hard to relax in the space because it's vibrating so strongly. And now if we look at orange, so orange is the color of wisdom and pleasure and desire, pride and loneliness. It symbolizes qualities that are a combination of the high energy color of red and the emotionally upbeat color of yellow. And orange also affects the appetite, increasing your hunger. So it's a good color for rooms where you eat, like kitchens. It's a very good color to have an accent in a kitchen. And it's also known to make us feel much more alert. So it's an excellent color to have in an office or a study. Any tint tone or shade of this, the terracotta even, would be a very good color for a study. And here we see it in an interior, and in interior design, the use of orange tones adds warmth and softness, and it focuses our minds on physical comfort, food and warmth and shelter. And here in this space, it's very energizing, but it's very appealing, and I like how they brought the orange through to the other space as well, linking the two rooms. And green. So green, here's a lovely picture of green. Again, one of the colors of nature, so it's a color that is very appealing to many people. However, strangely enough, in my experience as an interior designer, I've found many people who don't like green inside the house. So it is a bit like yellow, where a lot of people will love it and a lot of people won't love it as well. So you need to consider that. Green symbolizes health and compassion, favor, ambition, and passivity. It represents the balance between yellow and blue on the color wheel, and it's the color of growth and life and fertility and nature. It's linked to prosperity and wealth, so culturally, many cultures will have green as the symbol of wealth. Much money, paper money is printed green. Wallets and purses are often considered a good luck thing to have them green because it's meant to bring you wealth and prosperity. So in a lot of ways, green is linked to that kind of fortunate circumstance financially for people. So some of the negative associations of green include greed and jealousy and laziness as well. So all these colors can have good or bad elements to them. It's just good to be aware of these things when you're choosing colors. So here, in an interior, green was traditionally used in European interiors, in libraries and in studies, and it brings freshness to the room. When it has more yellow in it, it's very stimulating, and when it has more blue in it, it's much more calming. It's one of the colors that really sits between cool and warm, depending if you have a bit of blue or a bit of yellow in it. And violet or purple, the same. It signifies wealth and dignity, wisdom, but it can also signify arrogance and impatience. So violet is the shortest wavelength on the spectrum, and it's a combination of blue and red, and it represents nobility and power and royalty. It was one of the last colors to be officially developed. It's developed from the shells of sea creatures, and it was such a rare dye that it was only permitted to be worn in the clothing of royalty for a long time. But now, obviously, we have synthetic dyes, so anything in the purple. But it's often perceived as a feminine color as well. So especially when it has white added to it, because on its pastel elements. So here we have a dark violet room. Now, dark violet can be overpowering if you use too much of it in a space. Pale values can be very ethereal, like pale lilac and elements like that. Again, a very feminine feeling, might be nice for a woman's dressing room or feminine bedroom. Gold, now yellow is the opposite of purple on the color wheel, so any gold works well with the purple in the room. It helps balance purple. But you have to be careful. The wrong tone of violet can communicate something a bit cheap and nasty, so you have to be very careful when you choose your tones. This is a very interesting use. This is now an analogous color scheme, where we have the purple and the blue and the red next to each other on the color wheel, and it's used quite effectively in this space. And pink. So pink is the color of the millennium so far. Since the turn of the century, pink has been absolutely the power top color. And we're not really talking about baby pink. We're talking about a more sophisticated pink that has a very warm pink. So it symbolizes joyfulness and sweetness, calm, but you have to be careful. It can feel very passive as well if it's the wrong shade. It's mostly associated with femininity. However, when pink was first used, it was considered very much a masculine color. It was only used in men's clothing in Europe. And it's interesting how this association has changed since the beginning of the 20th century. That's when pink was started to be used in feminine clothing. But before that, it was a masculine color. It's related to harmony and closeness, sensitivity, and it has a calming effect. So there have been experiments done where places like prisons have been painted in the pale color of pink in order to calm down the prisoners. And it has been shown to be very effective to do that. So it's a very calming color. And here, bright pinks are useful and stimulating, quite fun. It's just become such a popular color. And again, when it's mixed with a bit of yellow to be a slightly more coral color of pink, it loses its feminine association and it has become more of a neutral in a way. Brown, one of our neutral colors, which is, as I consider neutral colors, the shoes and the belts and the staples of the room. This is a very serious color. It's warm. It's the color of nature, reliability, support, but it can feel heavy if you're used too much of it, and it can feel a little bit unsophisticated if it's not used in the right way. It is a very serious color, but not as serious as black. This is the warmer color of the earth. So brown in an interior is very relaxing, very reliable background color. It looks wonderful under incandescent light rather than LED light, which is more blue light, and really warms up a space. It's a great choice for north or south facing rooms. It works well with north light or south light or east or west. It's just one of those colors that seems to work in any kind of light.